Well, good afternoon and welcome to another webinar here on the Society's Photographers page and the Society's Photographers group. Again, we're joined by Colin from Permajet. If you've not tuned into any of Colin's webinars before, Colin has already done 2 for us, which is available on our Facebook page. So we started off by choosing the right paper for your images. And the last time Colin was on, he did a webinar all about the basics of color management. And today we're going on to the next stage of that, which is paper profiling. So welcome back, Colin. Thank you for joining us again. It's great to have you on board.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Colin, as always.
No. And the feedback we've had from the last webinars that we did with you have been really positive. You know, so many people getting so much information about color management, which we discussed on the last webinar. Maybe some people would think it's a bit more advanced than what actually it is, but we're breaking it down into simple ways that people can start color management. So the last time was all about calibrating your screen and stuff like that, but we're on to paper profiling today.
Well, indeed, this is the kind of the final part of what I call the color management chain. So you've done like the basics, as I said, monitor calibration, choosing the right paper, but ultimately what we at Permajet want you to do is to get the best quality from your ink, paper and media combination once you've chosen our paper. And the process I'm going to go through today is the same for any manufacturer. It's the idea, the logic is exactly the same. So it's the final stage because from Permajet point of view, it's all about the print. It's the finished print. That's what you value. That's what you can enjoy time after time, either in your own home or that you then sell on maybe to other people for them to enjoy. So yeah, hopefully it's not too technical because, as I've said previously, color management doesn't need to be too technical. It's to give you an overview of why we do it and the benefits to the end user. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
okay.
With that perfect summary, if you want to get the presentation open, we'll let you start the webinar. If anybody's got any questions for Colin as we go along, then please do put them in the comments box. And what we'll do is, as we're going through the presentation, if they're relevant to what Colin's speaking on, I'll pitch them to Colin. If not, we'll hold on to all the questions to the end and do a bit of a Q&A. So your presentation is now live, Colin, and I'm going to bow out for now, and I'll pop in with any questions. But again, thanks for taking the time out today to do this webinar for us. We really appreciate it, bud.
Not a problem, Colin. Not a problem at all. Okay. Right, so there we go. Profiling your chosen paper or papers is what we're just going to be covering today. So I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation. There are a number of slides. Hopefully they're in the main most self-explanatory, but as Colin says, any questions then please fire away. So let's start off. Okay, and the reason is, as we say, it's now to calibrate your printer and papers. And a printer profile makes sure that the combination of your ink, paper and printer and inks are giving you the ultimate quality for the print that you want. And we talk about profiles, and a number of people say, well, what is a profile? And basically it's a measure of how your printer performs against an industry standard. And the industry standard is an ICC, which is the International Colour Consortium, where they've kind of drawn a line in the sand to say, this is the line that you need to meet in order to have good color. Okay, and on the screen you can see there's a color chart. That's the chart that we use, and it's 1,013 color blocks that we individually assess to see how well your printer is actually creating those specific colors. Now, there are 2 types of profile. You'll hear people talk about a generic profile or a custom profile. Now, what the difference between the two is quite simple, but fundamental in the same. A custom profile is specific to one specific printer. So, for example, today, as I've just mentioned to Colin, I'm doing some videos. We're just launching the new Canon Pro 300 A3 Plus printer. So, my first job on receipt of the printer was to create profiles of our individual papers on that printer. So some 33 swatches of the chart that you can see there, I've printed off for Oyster, Gloss, the whole range, and they are custom profiles for that specific printer. Now, once they've all been done, so if I'm ever using that printer to print on Oyster or fiber-based gloss, whatever it might be, I am using that profile that I've created on that printer, so it's custom. Now, those same profiles are now available on our website to download so that anyone else with a Canon Pro 300 can use them, but to them, they are a generic because they were not created on their individual printer. So that's really kind of what the difference is between the two. Custom has to be made on your printer. A generic one that you download from a website to use, from anybody's website, is classed as a generic. Now, Epson themselves say that their printers can have up to 10% differential in printer performance. So what you might find is that the generic may or may not work for you in terms of your particular setup. But we always say downloading the generic profile is a good starting point to see how well the profiles work for you. And if you're happy with the results that you're getting from using a generic profile, that means that your printer is working in the same level or same band of performance as the printer that was used to create it in the first place. If the colors aren't quite right, then you're slightly out of that band. Therefore, you need to come down the custom profile route to bring your printer back into line. But in a lot of occasions, and certainly we've found with Canons, that our generics are very good for a lot of people. So if you're looking at a Permajet product, have a look at our website and put in your printer and ink combination. And in the main, we've got a lot of printers there. However, some of the more obscure printers, I should say, maybe like an Expression 750, for example, from Epson, or a Brother, we probably won't have those on our website as a generic. However, we can create you a custom profile for any printer, paper, and media combination. Okay, so how do we go about that? Well, I say you've got that chart, and you can download this from the permajet.com website, where there's a whole section under ICC profiling. And I've recently done videos to show you how to do the process, be it on a PC or a Mac, because they have their subtle differences between the two systems. So once you've downloaded the chart, we also ask you to download a little bit of software called the Adobe Color Print Utility. That little bit of software is only used to run this target patch. And we ask that it be used because we want to print your chart on your printer without any influence from any imaging software, so Photoshop or Lightroom, Elements, Affinity. Because you can't turn color management off after CS4, I think it was, yes, CS4. Also, what you need to do is turn off the printer settings so that the driver for the particular media type you're using isn't trying to influence the patch and its colors. So there's two stages there. Prior to printing, though, you need to make sure that you have a complete nozzle check pattern. If all your nozzles aren't firing, you can get what we call banding, and that will give a skewed result, if you will, or actually may even be rejected by the device that we use to read the final print. Also, check your print head alignment to make sure that you're printing sharp. Again, any blurriness between the color blocks can give a skewed result, and that's not what we need. So you print the target patch using the Adobe Color Print Utility. You then post that chart to ourselves here at Permajet, and you can see there I've got large letter highlighted in yellow and underlined. Please use large letter, because if you've got insufficient postage, there's a growing pile of envelopes at Leamington Spa sorting office where there's insufficient postage paid. So please make sure you use a large letter stamp. Once we receive the charts in the post, and this morning I think we've had a good 10 or 12 charts in this morning, they're checked by either myself or my colleague Louise to make sure that there is no banding and that there's no blurring of the color blocks. And also to make sure that people have actually used the Adobe Color Print Utility. And we can tell if you haven't because the printing is kind of washed out. And that means you actually used Photoshop or Elements, Lightroom. You can't do that because it's got some influence coming in from that imaging software. If that is the case on any of those scenarios, you'll get an email or a phone call from myself or Louise to say, sorry, you need to redo it for these particular reasons and resubmit. So it's always worthwhile to make sure you have got a complete nozzle check pattern, your head is aligned, and you are using Adobe Color Print utility. If we're happy, we will then scan the chart through our device, create you a custom profile. That is then emailed back to you along with loading instructions. You can then install the profile on your system. And then when you open up your imaging software, it will be there for you to select. Okay. Now, some people say, well, can't I make my own print profiles? And you can. There is a device, for example, the Color Monkey Photo, which is around about £335, I think, at the time of doing this slide. But that only measures 50 patches. So you print the patches, you then manually scan with the device, you then reprint those 50 patches and rescan, and you have a profile. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the Color Monkey Photo at all, because at least you're employing some form of color management and profiling to your papers. However, as I said, with our service, it's 1,013 color patches. So that gives you a much more detailed and accurate profile. And in the bottom corner there, you can see that's the device that we use to scan the printed patches. And if you're using Permajet paper, it's a free service. Okay, regardless of the ink, regardless of the printer, if it's on Permajet paper, it's a free service. If you want us to profile a competitor's paper, we have no problem with that. And you can download from our website vouchers that get you that access to that service. I think it's around about, I might be told off by the office later on today, I think it's about £20 that we charge per paper if it's a non-Permajet product. Okay. So now I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of how to use the little bit of software called the Adobe Color Print Utility. And there's a link again on our website to download this and the target patch. It's kilobytes in size. It's very small. You've only basically got the print setup and print buttons there. Now, one of the crucial things we need to talk about is the media type. Each printer manufacturer has its own range of papers, Canon, Epson, Brother, whatever it might be. So it's an Epson Premium Gloss, or whatever it might be, a Canon Pro Platinum. You will never find on the printer driver a Permajet media setting or a photo speed or a Hahnemuller. So what we do when we bring out a new paper, we identify within that particular printer the options available, and we choose which we feel gives the best result or is the closest type of paper to the one you're doing. So, for example, on screen, you can see there we've got fiber-based distinction 320, which is one of our barytas. It's got like a glossy coating on the top. Therefore, my colleague Vij, who's our technical manager, has run off a number of charts of distinction on different media settings for, say, the Shaw Colour P700. And in his opinion, feels that Epson Premium Glossy is the preferred media type. If you look at the Alpha Rag at the top there, you've got Epson Archival Matte on a 6-ink printer, but he feels on the more advanced photo printers that Velvet Fine Art paper is the more appropriate. Because Velvet Fine Art paper is of a similar product type to Alpha Natural Rag. They are cotton rag type products. The coatings that are used are from the same kind of ilk, if you will. So you wouldn't use for a cotton rag product a glossy setting because it utilizes the wrong black, which I'll come to as well. Because on certain printers, well, on the main photo printers like the Shaw Colour range or the Canon Pro 300 100 10S, you've got different blacks that you can utilize, a matte black and a photo black, which are specific to different types of papers. So we would ask you to choose a media setting that you feel is appropriate. So as I say, if it's distinction, we would say Epson Premium Gloss. In Canon, it might be Photo Plus Premium Gloss. Depends on the actual printer that you've got and the options available to you. We ask you to let us know on the form that you fill out what media setting you have chosen, because we will remind you of that in the profile name, and I'll come to that later on in the presentation, in case you've forgotten. And this afternoon, I've got to do some prints on the Pro 300 for Museum Heritage, and I will look at the extension at the end of the name, and it will remind me what media setting to use when I'm going to print. Okay, so that's the media type, and that's why it's important to use it. Now, this only applies to Windows machines, because if you're on a Mac, color management is automatically turned off when doing this process. So you don't need to worry about this. This is purely to do with Windows machines. And as you can see on screen there, under mode, we need you to select no color management. That means that the printer driver written by Epson for premium glossy photo paper isn't going to try and be applied to the file that you're printing. It's turned off. Therefore, we get a raw result from your printer for those particular colors. If that is turned on, then we will notice that, because we know what to expect when we see the charts. So you must make sure on a Windows machine that that is selected to no color management. And it's the layout might be different from printer to printer, but in the main, that's what you'll see under mode for Epson. If we look at Canon, it's a little bit more complicated in a way. You've got to go to the manual section on color intensity, and there under color correction, you select none. So that's having the same effect as what we've just seen on the Epson side of things, but that's specific to Canon. And if you've got a photo printer from Lexmark or Brother or HP, you would need to just make sure in those printer drivers that color management is turned off. Now, these need to be updated, so forgive me, these are a little old, so it's just reminded me, I better make a note, Colin, that I need to update these links. But we have got new ones on the website that I've done recently, showing you how to actually do the process. And you can stop and start, rewind until you're familiar with the process. So once we've got the color chart and processed it, and you've received it back by email, we need to make sure that you're going to be using it correctly at the output stage. Now, if you have attended my earlier webinar about color management, I will have talked about color spaces and how a device works in a different color space. Because we're talking about the print world, printers in the main work in the color space that you can see on screen, which is Adobe RGB. Monitors work in a bigger color space. Well, sorry, monitors work in sRGB, but cameras capture outside of that, because cameras can capture billions of colors. But the amount of colors that you can replicate on ink and paper are drastically smaller than what the sensor can see. And the working space that we use is called Adobe RGB 1998 or Adobe 98. You'll see it listed as. That is the workspace that ink, paper, and printers work in. So make sure under color settings that you've selected the printing color space as Adobe RGB, and I'll show that in the next slide. The rendering intent from our point of view is we prefer it with using perceptual rather than maybe relative colorimetric. And that's really to do with how the colors are going to be displayed on the print. If you imagine that when you capture the image in camera, you've got a balloon of information, and we need to shrink that balloon down into a color space that can be worked by the ink and paper. If you let the air out the balloon, all the colors tend to stay in ratio, and we call that perceptual. If you release the air and twist the balloon, what you can do is lose some colors, or you might see it's not smooth in the transitions in highlight and shadows. I'll be honest with you, in a lot of cases, I can't see the difference between the two, but it can be very color specific or print and media specific. So if one rendering intent when you're printing doesn't seem right, try another print by switching to relative colorimetric or vice versa. You may see a difference. Okay, it's very much trial and error. The final one there to make sure is ticked is black point compensation. It's just to ensure that the darkest black that was seen by the sensor is the darkest black when printed, because from that the software will work out your gradations and that. So Always tick black point compensation. And, you know, this is kind of like the Permajet recipe. We prefer to say perceptual as the recommended rendering intent. Okay. This slide is just showing you where to set the workspace, and you can see working space is at the top there, RGB. If you don't change it, I think it's defaulted to something like US web coated or sRGB or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but please select Adobe RGB 1998. Okay, you've received your profiles back from us. Okay, download them onto your desktop. Unzip them if there's a number of them, because we sometimes will batch them across to you. Once you've got the individual files on screen with a PC, just right click, and at the top it says install profile. Click on it, and that will automatically drop it into the correct folder that you can see there. On a Mac, you need to physically drag and drop it from your desktop into the profiles folder, which was in Color Sync, which is within Library, which is under the hard drive. Once they are stored there and you open up your imaging software, they will be there for you to select. So, profile name. I mentioned this earlier on when we were talking about the media selection. All Permajet profiles are prefixed APJ, so they are alphabetically in sequence within your drop-down list. We will include your surname, the print or the ink type, so OEM is the manufacturer's own ink, but you might be using, for example, Image Life, which is our third-party ink for our EcoFlow systems. You might be using Mara ink, or you might be using Blue Box or JetTech. Whatever the brand you tell us you're using, we will include there so we know that it's an Image Life or whatever. We'll then put the printer model. Some people have more than one printer, so therefore it's important to see, you know, to define between the two, because a 2880 and an SCP-600 will perform totally differently, different ink sets. So we include that as well for people. PK or MK, it's photo black or matte black. Photo black should always be used on any glossy or luster type finish. Matte black should ideally be used whenever possible on any matte paper. You can sometimes you can use photo black on a matte paper and get away with it, but if you've got heavy areas of density, you might see mottling. If you try and use a matte black on a glossy or a satin paper, it won't dry, it'll smudge. It's because the formulations and the science between the two is very, very different. Your media type. We'll list what product you've requested to be done. Oyster, for example, in this case, or portrait white. And then the media setting. So that's what you chose off that previous chart. So here we've got Epson Premium Glossy, and for portrait white, it's watercolor radiant white. So that's a reminder. If you can't remember, oh crikey, was it gloss or semi-gloss? Look at the last letters on the profile name, and that will remind you. If you're using a generic profile, the only difference between what you see is there will not be any surname. So it'll say APJ OEM. There will not be a surname. Then you know you're using a generic profile. Okay, how do you use your profile? Well, in Photoshop, Lightroom, Photoshop manages the colors. You can see the profile selected there, which is for a 2880. This is generic, it's OEM, Oyster, Epson Premium Gloss. We've got perceptual selected and black point compensation. Now, just a little thing just to remind people about here. When printing monochromes, okay, you can print monochromes using a profile. However, if you're getting some form of cast, which can either be a green or a magenta type cast, it might be useful to actually not use a profile. And if your printer supports it, as the Epsons do, go to Printer Manager's Colors and select under the color mode there, Advanced Black and White. What we find is using the Advanced Black and White gives you a very good result and tends to remove the possibility of getting any form of cast. And you know, and a basic way of considering it, a profile is made up of all the colors your printer supports. When you're using the Advanced Black and White, the software written by Epson still uses a little bit of the CMY, but but not very much at all, and focuses more on the black, light, black, light, light, black. So the possibility of you seeing a cast is greatly removed. And once you go into the advanced black and white section, if you then click on the advanced button, you can then create sepia tones, neutral tones, warm tones. There's a lot of flexibility in there. So if you're not aware that it sits there, and some people haven't realized because they've never had the need to click down on the drop-down list for color, but there is an advanced black and white setting set there. On Canon, it will say black and white photo print, which you can select. Okay, have a look at them, because it might actually resolve some issues you've had when printing monochromes with a profile if you're getting a bit of a cast. But the cast can vary from product to product or not at all. Some people never see it. Some people find that a particular product may be more prone to it. And that can be just down to the base tint and how it's viewed, and also in your lighting conditions. Right, Colin, I think that is it, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Colin. Again, another really interesting webinar. I know quite a few people are kind of tuned in on the latter half. So just a general reminder that these webinars are backed up. So you can go on the Societies of Photographers Facebook page, go to the video tab, and you'll be able to find not only this one will be saved there, but also your previous ones. Because there have been some kind of like comments about other parts of color management. So please do go and have a look at those other webinars, because it's part of a series. So Colin's done a series for us, and going from paper to color management and right through to the final one today of paper profiling. So a really interesting thing. And as we mentioned, as we're going into it, it was kind of like a... we wanted to demystify those kind of like thoughts out there that it's very complicated to do, but you broke it down today into certainly manageable pieces. You know, people can go out and start to do these things. We've had a question from Ken, and Ken is asking, I'm still using stock of FB Distinction 360. I believe this is no longer available. Do I have to reprofile for FB Distinction 320?
Ideally, yes. We had to change the weight. Unfortunately, fiber-based Distinction 360 was quite a rigid product, and we had issues with transporting some in printers, so we reduced the weight to 320. Use the 360. You can use the Distinction 360 profile on the 320 option. Okay. It's like but if you're noticing that the colors aren't right, then that's when you go down the custom profile route. As far as I'm aware, the coating is the same. We just reduced the base weight, therefore there shouldn't really be an issue. But as I say, if you're not happy with how that's working, then just go down the custom profile route. Not a problem.
Awesome, thanks for that. Other people are saying that this has been something that's on their to-do list, and they've been meaning to do it a long time. If they need any further details, are you able to kind of help them on like the phone or website, or what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Well, certainly have a look at the videos that we've posted recently regarding color management and profiling. If that doesn't give you the answer you're looking for, then just give us a call in the office, 01789 739 200. Get put through to technical. We're only too pleased to help people. It's in our interest that you're printing properly and correctly and efficiently. Ironically, as that might sound, you know, people print more when they're happy to print. They're much more relaxed about hitting the print button, knowing that the print they're going to get is going to be a good one. So we encourage people to contact us if they want some guidance. And, you know, 99 times out of 100, we can help you over the phone with the process. We can refer you to the videos online, which, as I say, you can stop at any point, rewind. But ultimately, if necessary, then we can use Team Viewer to maybe access remotely an individual's computer to just make sure that everything's correct. Not a problem.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's it for the questions today. I'm just having a quick look down. Oh, no, we've got a few more. Let's go to... okay, we'll go to this one. Esther is asking, hi, do you have any guidelines on what type of paper to use for certain types of photography, as this really is a minefield for me?
Well, that question would have been more, you know, answered in a way on choosing the right paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, have a look at that video if Esther was not able to see that live. The thing is, and I'll cover it now. I'm not going to. Is that there is no right or wrong answer to what paper choice there is. I've just been working on with our marketing executive at the moment, a bit of a flow chart to try and help people identify what paper to use. And it's very easy to do a flow chart where questions are yes or no. You know, do you want a glossy paper? Do you want metallic? Do you want it cotton rag? Do you want it whatever? And we can, by using that, we can flow chart down to give you some options to consider. You know, how warm do you want it? How white, cold do you want it? When it comes down to actually subject matter, it's so much down to the individual, because in theory, all papers are suitable for all applications. So Oyster, for example, our biggest seller, you can use for sport, wedding, landscape, if you wish. But that depends on the look and feel. But you might be looking for a matte feel. Do you want it textured? Therefore, it's what's in your head here. What kind of look and feel are you trying for? So we're not prescriptive and say you can only use portrait white for landscape, or you can only use Oyster for weddings, because you might feel that that particular paper works well in a number of different situations. So there's no easy answer to that one, I'm afraid. It's trial and error. But what we do, a bit of a sales pitch coming here, is we offer test packs from the families so people can try different papers over a different image to see which works best for them.
Brilliant. Because you've just launched a free digital guide on the art of paper selection as well, haven't you?
We have. That's called The Knowledge, and thank you, Colin, for reminding me there. That's good. I'll get a tick mark from the MD and Abby and marketing. There is a breakdown there called The Knowledge that you can download, and it gives you more information on the different paper types. And there's an element of this is good for this type of work, but ultimately it can be considered as 2 or 3 people's viewpoint, and you may not agree. I mean, it's again what I said in the presentation. You know, we give like a recipe, but you might change that recipe to suit your own likes in terms of paper choice. So, you know, if you like a particular look, then we can hopefully have a paper within our range that would get you where you need to be. And The Knowledge is a good resource to have a look in terms of what the papers are, their different base constructions, because sometimes people are restricted on what they can use because of their printer. And if you're at the lower end, without being rude to them, the very basic 4-color, say, expression range, they're not really designed to handle heavyweight fine art papers. They're more your digital photo weights, 270 gram, so pigment-friendly luster, say, for a photo speed, or our Oyster gloss. So that can negate or eliminate certain papers to try.
Brilliant. Keith is, excuse me. Keith is asking, I have a colour monkey. Do you recommend this type of device?
Yes, not a problem at all. Any device that you utilise to improve your colour management is a good thing. So, yep, not a problem at all.
Fantastic. Got a few questions off Kathy. So yes, Kathy, this webinar will be available to watch if you tuned in kind of halfway through. If you go onto the Society of the Societies of Photographers Facebook page and go onto the video tab, it'll be there. As soon as we finish broadcasting, it'll go straight into there. It takes about 2 minutes to process. And also, you're asking about what is the best paper for portraiture. Again, I think what I might do is there's been quite a few questions about paper choice. So in the comments, what I'll do after we finish the broadcast, I'll just put in the link to that webinar, which Colin did, and it's about an hour-long webinar, and it's all about paper choice and the different choices out there and what works. You know, and as Colin said before, there's no real hard, fast rule to it. You know, try the test packs out and see what works well for your photography, because it's going to be different for every studio. Even in the same genre, if you're shooting portraiture, one studio is going to prefer a different type of paper to the studio down the road, because you know, it's a personal decision, isn't it?
It's very personal, and what you must remember is you print for yourselves. You don't necessarily print to satisfy other people. If you like a paper and a combination works for you, then that's the right way to go about it. The final print must give you pleasure. You must be happy with it, not using a paper because, you know, someone down the camera club said, oh, you got to use this particular paper. If you're not happy with it, find one that you are. That's the crucial thing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions that we've got today. So again, thank you so much for providing this series on paper and color management and everything you do at Permajet. It's been really insightful and helpful for all our followers on Facebook and all our members. We really appreciate you giving us your time, Colin.
It's a pleasure. Anytime, Colin.
Excellent. Thank you very much, mate, and you take care.
And you. Thank you. Bye-bye now.